Hello, everybody. I am Henry Crawford, and tonight I am honored to be hosting the book launch of Anne Bracken's new book, Once You're Inside, Poems Exploring Incarceration. But this is really more than just a book launch. It's sort of a fundraiser for the Justice Arts Coalition. Tonight, Anne will donate proceeds from all copies of Once You're Inside to the Justice Arts Coalition, a group that Anne works with. To make this happen, you'll need to order from Anne's website using the link that I'll put in the Zoom chat from time to time during the reading. Following the reading, we'll have some time for questions. Please feel free to ask questions in the Zoom chat, and I'll pick them up and pose them to the presenters. If we have more time, we'll maybe be able to give you some opportunity to pose direct questions. To do this, you'll be raising your hand using the reactions raise hand feature down in the Zoom menu down there in the bottom of your screen. If you raise your hand and I see a hand up, I will unmute you at that time and you can pose a direct question. So that's, I think that's all the ground rules here. So without more, let me introduce tonight's poets. Anne Bracken has published two poetry collections, No Barking in the Hallways, Poems from the Classroom, and The Altar of Innocence. Once You're Inside is her third poetry collection. Tonight, she will be in conversation with Grace Cavalieri, who is Maryland's 10th poet laureate. So let's get started. I give you Anne Bracken and Grace Cavalieri in conversation about the new book, Once You're Inside.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with everybody and my best friends, Henry and Anne, with this brilliant new book. Annie, what's the title of this book and what's in it?
The book is called Once You're Inside, and the artwork was done by Carol Alden, who is a formerly incarcerated woman. And the drawing on the cover is called You Will Not Waste My Life. And it's a woman who's crocheting her way out of a cell. So it's really an extraordinary piece of art. Well, and the book is about the 3 years that I volunteered in 3 Maryland prisons. And I go into the people that I met, the environment that I saw, and some of the, pretty awful things that happen in a prison that most people really don't know about. And the goal of the book is to humanize incarcerated people.
And give us an opening poem.
The opening poem is called Passage to Possibility. Black and white and shades of gray capture everything I see. Sometimes a flash of color tricks the eye, a lone orange jumpsuit, the trampled fibers of the red carpet in the elevator, the pink of an ID badge. Today, I discover the tunnel that connects the education building to the tiers. The classroom door is locked, or maybe the lock is just broken, but the familiar red door doesn't yield an entry when I ring the buzzer. The guards behind the locked door wave me to the end of the hallway and point me to an unfamiliar entrance. I shrug my shoulders and shake my head, afraid to walk in places I don't know. A man from the writing group beckons me to follow. I walk through another set of barred doors, thick black iron barred doors. A black guard in a black uniform waves me through. And I find myself in a tunnel as wide as a city street, with a high roof and drab walls. Imprisoned men wearing gray DOC garb or white kitchen uniforms fill the tunnel. And I realize all these men could be on the outside, maybe working as a shopkeeper or a minister, maybe walking kids home from school or playing ball in the park. But today, they stream through this vast underground tunnel, back and forth, caught between now and possibility.
That is Anne Bracken reading from her new book. Anne, what actually triggered the wish to go into prisons to teach? What prompted you? And did you go in with expectations? What did you think you'd find?
I was pretty scared to go. I initially went to interview another teacher from the University of Maryland who had been running the writing program. And then my editor said, well, I want you to interview her and I want you to go into the prison and interview the men. So my journey into the prisons was really one reluctant step after another. I agreed to go and interview the men, and I was really very impressed by who they were and what they talked about. And then I agreed to go back a couple weeks later, and I kept agreeing to go back, and I wound up becoming an official volunteer and volunteering for 3 years.
And each time you found something new.
Yes.
So all that is in the book. So let's keep on going with another poem. Anne Bracken.
This poem is called What I Think About, in the voice of an imprisoned man. My deepest fear is that no one waits for me. I sit in a barred cell, live next to a steel toilet, stained and reeking. You're nothing but an animal, the guard tells me, as he opens my cage twice a day. Daily, I forgive myself, my younger self, so angry, so charged and reckless. My younger self, no tools but swagger and steel stuffed under a mattress. I wish I could tell that boy how his grandma and his baby sister loved him, but he pushed away all that kind of talk. I don't need y'all, he'd say. Don't need nothing from nobody. I hear those words bounce off the walls and fill my cell with their echoes. I weep for forgiveness.
Anne, how did you fortify yourself emotionally to confront that energy every time? And how did you repair when you left to go home? What did you do to recover from the sadness?
I wrote. There is no way to prepare. I mean, it's just a scary thing to go into a prison. Luckily, I would pretty much always go with my friend, at least in the beginning. But then after a while, she would have something that came up at work and she would ask me to go in alone. And I remember the first time I went in alone, I was really pretty nervous. And when you ride the elevator from the building down to the school, there's a big X on the floor. And if you stand there, the elevator will stall. So it's all fraught with peril. And then you're walking in hallways alone, and there's incarcerated people walking back and forth, and no one was escorting me. But I actually felt fairly safe. I have this habit from when I was teaching and I was in a difficult school, and I do believe in angels. And so I would just ask the angels to go with me.
And give us two poems together. I know you've written about labor from different points of view. So these two poems are about work, but they're from very different angles. So read them together.
Okay. This one is called She Literally Worked Herself to Death. I'm curious about her dedication, about the way she pressed her black uniform before she left for the 3 p.m. shift at the prison. She literally worked herself to death. 25 years of faithful service, no sick days, no extra time off. She worked double shifts because the prison couldn't hire enough qualified folks to replace the older ones who were bone tired or achy with stress. She literally worked herself to death. When she missed a shift, a friend went to her house and found her dead, sitting upright on the couch, dressed in her black uniform, clear plastic lunchbox filled with dinner. The chaplain claims she literally worked herself to death. And this next poem is about prison labor. prisoners who work inside of institutions for extremely low wages and many times doing very dangerous work like these women. I heard this. This is a found poem based on a Democracy Now! Radio show. It's called $1 an Hour to Fight the Largest Fire in California. Because I'm a prisoner, I put my life on the line for $2 a day and $1 an hour when I'm fighting fires. I've protected California. I've saved thousands of dollars worth of property. I've got training in wildland firefighting, and I'd love to be a firefighter when I get out. I just need a few fire science credits and some college credits. But the biggest problem staring me down, I can't get licensed as an EMT because I have a record. What kind of sense does that make? If all my training and experience is enough to fight fires while I'm incarcerated, it should be enough to fight fires when I'm free. Do you know how I could live if I was a real firefighter? I could give my children a sweet little house, maybe even send them to college if I made the $74,000 a year like a real firefighter. When I first got here, I worked in the office, but after a while, I knew too much. So they moved me outside to work landscaping. But I'm real allergic to poison oak. So if I breathe that stuff, my throat closes up and I could die. I figured I might as well be on the fire line if that was the case. I didn't volunteer to go to prison. I didn't volunteer to go to fire camp and fight fires. I'm here because I want to go back to my family and my children.
Wow, this is really very powerful stuff. I remember that in the book, there is some talk about legal reparations for this. Did that ever happen?
Well, a couple of years ago, when this poem, well, I guess it was last year, they did pass a law in the California legislature, and Gavin Newsom signed it, saying that formerly incarcerated people could apply to have their records expunged, but there was no guarantee that they would be expunged in order to be able to become a firefighter. So it was a piece of paper, more or less. And if people are interested in reading more about female firefighters, I just read an amazing book this summer about female firefighters called Breathing Fire by Jamie Lowe.
This is strong, stunning, terrifying, good stuff. Let's hear another.
Thank you. Thank you. So this poem, and I think my friend is here who I had this conversation with. This poem is about the women's prison. It's called Dress Code for the Women's Prison. They won't let you in, my friend insists. The assistant warden makes up her own rules. Don't think you can go braless either. Wear a sports bra. No jeans, no leggings, no sheer blouses, no halters, no mini skirts, no open-toed shoes. The list by the door must have 20 prohibitions, and most of them make sense. But my friend adds one more. No underwire bras. That's the only kind I wear, I tell her. It's stupid to buy a new bra to volunteer in the women's prison. I wear underwires in the men's prison all the time. The alarm never goes off. I imagine the scenario. I arrive as a new volunteer in a place where a pen can be turned into a weapon. Someone deduces that I'm wearing an underwire bra. Then what? How does an imprisoned woman corner me so the guards don't notice? I imagine another scenario. Would she slit open the fabric and remove the underwires? Does she risk taking both? I imagine this scenario. Maybe we slip into an unmonitored toilet stall and switch bras. Then she wears the hidden weapons back onto her tier.
And What did you wear?
A sports bra.
So to enter, it's not like going to the University of Maryland.
No.
Decided what kind of look you wanted to make as a statement. So what did you wear to class?
I tried to dress somewhat professionally. You know, I would wear usually nice slacks and a nice blouse. And if it was wintertime, I would wear boots and a scarf.
And did you ever get over feeling self-conscious? Did you ever feel in danger? Did you feel fragile, vulnerable when you were teaching?
I felt humbled. I felt humbled that I was pretty readily accepted by all of the people in the prison. That, you know, I hope that they were picking up on my air of sincerity, that I wanted to be there. I've been a teacher my whole life, and I really care about education. I love writing. I love creative writing, and I believe that it can open all kinds of doors for you. And that's why I was there. So
how many did you teach? Was it the same group every time? The same pod of prisoners?
No, it was sometimes we would have the same people for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and then there might be another program that started that they would have to go to that was at the same time as ours. We did have some people that stayed for quite a while, and then other people were moved to other prisons. Sometimes they were in lockdown in solitary.
Did you find anyone with real talent that you felt you could curry and move along?
I found a few, yes. Yes. And one of them actually, he had his wife write to me this year and asked me if I would write a foreword to his book. And he took a poem that we wrote together and turned it into an illustrated long form poem. And then I wrote the foreword for his book.
So he wouldn't have written that book had you not been there, right?
Right.
In other words, he had this wish, he had the information, but what did he need to say, I am entitled to write a book?
I think he needed probably somebody to believe in him and somebody to encourage him to believe in himself.
Let's go on with another poem and give us the title of the book again, Anne Bracken.
The title of the book is Once You're Inside, Poems Exploring Incarceration. So I wrote this poem kind of as an answer to, or a question about, you know, why does it cost so much to incarcerate people? Everybody always says how expensive it is. And I really didn't see any evidence of that, especially in the physical environment. This poem is called Maintenance. In a place where water can be a curse, puddles in the corner reek of chemicals and etch the tiles brown with stains. Plastic buckets in the hallway brim with gray water. Bugs float atop rafts of sodden drywall. Trays rigged to the ceiling with steel straps catch the steady trickle of water. For over 2 months, a leaking pipe creates a lake in the hallway. Cotton mop heads contain the fetid water. When I point out the dangers, mold, slipping, bugs, one of the counselors tells me, those of us who work here have learned to walk around it.
What a metaphor.
Yes.
What a metaphor.
Yes.
What other health standards did you see violated? Because we don't know unless you tell us. This is the value. This is the importance, the significance of this book, because we were not there.
Right.
So what other health standards were in peril?
It appeared that whatever was wrapping the pipes, and I don't know if it was asbestos, but whatever insulation was wrapping the pipes was loose and falling off a lot of times. There was a very strong odor of bleach in the prison. It didn't seem to make sense why there would be such a strong odor of bleach, There were mice in the restrooms. Thank God I never saw one, but my other friend had seen them. And it was very dirty. It was a very dirty place. I'm a big, having been a public school teacher and understanding the importance of environment, I really believe in creating an environment in a room where you're learning to evoke what it is you want your students to grow into. And there's not much beauty going on or even care for the physical environment in a prison.
How about the food? What did you notice about food? You did not eat there, I hope.
I
Okay, but
I ate one time because I was invited to a volunteer dinner and it would have been very rude not to eat. So I did eat and it was fine.
you were given different food, I feel sure.
I don't know.
Well,
Probably.
what was the complaint about the food usually?
Well, a couple of the men told me that there were rat feces on their trays when they would go through the lines. And another man told me that the salad greens were all wilted and full of grit and dirt. Most recently, I read a report from the Justice Policy Institute about the food in Maryland prisons during COVID, and it was very poor quality. They were served a lot of very cold, hard cheese sandwiches and bologna. Had to wait a long time for meals. There was nothing regular, and much more filler and starch than even they usually get.
And please read us some more poetry from this book.
This is a poem that was taken right out of a letter that one of my former students wrote to me. He was rearrested and he spent many months at Central Booking in Baltimore, which is the holding place for people before they get a hearing. And I just was really impressed with this letter. It's called Letter from a Baltimore Jail, a found poem. I face these 4 enemy walls, this cell robbing me of my desire to live. The courts have no care for my real story. To let them tell it, no Black man would drive away from gunshots. I've been writing a lot lately, the most important part of me, my true freedom within these pages. I've written to my girlfriend every day, 20 new poems, and I've started a second book. It's called My Second Chance. I'm in the cell 23 hours a day since January 29th. Today is Valentine's, and I finally get a shower. I've maintained my hygiene with a bird bath at the sink. At first, I had no pen, no paper. There isn't a library here. I read the Bible every day and take beautiful lessons from it. There's so much riding on my case. I want to prove that men can change, or else others will fall victim to this wicked system. When I get more paper, I'll copy my poems for you. I'm down to 10 pieces, using every one strategically. I send you all my love.
That is really hard to hear, but the fact that you did listen, that you listened and heard everything, what a tribute to you, because I doubt if anyone else ever really heard what was said, and it comes out in this book. And so continue with the poem Privilege.
Okay. Privilege. Orient yourself to the scene. One man speaking to another, separated by a vacuum of power, a trespass of privilege. The imprisoned man places his documents on the table and harnesses his courage. Maybe this time he's got enough certificates, barber school, alternatives to violence, kitchen management. Fluent in the language of subservience, he answers the parole officer's questions. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Maybe this time, a respite for his accomplishments. Congratulations! You've done a lot since the last time I saw you. The parole officer thumbs through the file and then pushes it back across the table. Come back in 2 years.
And that last line, those monosyllabic words are like drum beats. Come back in 2 years. Boom, 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 boom. It's really, it goes right to the heart, right to the heart. Now, how did you know about this conversation?
I had this conversation with the man. He came into the writing group after he had been through this with the parole officer. And, you know, the things that you might read about in the newspaper or in a in-depth article about incarceration, I mean, these things are real. This is really happening to people. People work very, very hard to try to make parole, and then to be told 2 years.
I am so grateful to you for knowing what to hear and making it permanent, Anne, because it's not done often and people don't have the opportunity. It's not that there aren't good people out there that are willing, but it's not easy to crack, even to manage to get in. I
No,
think you
it's
had a
not.
hard time even maintaining your status as teacher. You had to come over every kind of obstacle.
Yes, yeah, there was only one person. Well, in the beginning, the school principal helped us. But after that, there was only one person who helped us, and it was the chaplain. And the
Why?
chaplain, why? I'm not sure, but I could contact him and he would answer me and remind the men to come to the writing group. And he was a real bulwark while I was there.
I understand that you had one ally, but I still don't understand why they made it so difficult for you with so much red tape and speed bumps. They knew you were helping. I mean, you weren't of danger. You weren't going to. Did they monitor what you taught? Did they care what kind of poems you gave to the men?
No, they care. In the beginning, my friend and I could take in books, and people would give us, and we taught at the University of Maryland, so we had all these grammar books and writing books, and if we weren't using them, we could take them in, and we donated them to the men and women in the prison. And then after a while, something happened. There was some kind of drug, I think like those little Listerine, almost paper things that you can put on your tongue, that somebody put into a book, and it got into prison. Maybe it was Suboxone. I don't know what drug it was, but after a while they said you can't bring any books in. So we didn't bring any books, but they didn't care if we brought handouts in, which are also paper. So I would take a binder and I would have a lot of handouts of poems or short stories or plays. And the guards would just kind of open the binder, look at it, and shove it through the machine. And they didn't check when I came out to make sure that I had the same amount of paper. It was okay to give handouts. I mean, a lot of the rules didn't make any sense.
It occurs to me that there could have been some fear that consciousness raising would not be useful. That if you taught too much about liberation and too much about identity, and you could affect change, even
Well,
behavior.
the men were already affecting change in their own lives by what they were reading. You know, one man told me he was reading The Miseducation of the American Negro. And they would read the Malcolm X biography and Frederick Douglass, and the book Capital. That was another one that came out several years ago criticizing capitalism. I mean, they were hungry. They were really hungry to learn. And so the way that I saw my job was I would find poetry that kind of hooked into their political interests and use the poetry to keep talking about politics and maybe show them another way to write about it.
Tell us about the mental health box.
Okay, the mental health box. It must be purposeful. The green container affixed to the wall, the lid flush against the box, bound with a lock. It doesn't take up much space. I feel foolish when I see the social worker and I tell her every week I walk by, I wonder what's in the mental health box. I imagine torn pieces of paper and men filling the box with furtively written requests, stuffed in as they walk past. Please don't restrict my visitors. My cellmate has been in solitary for a year. When's he getting out? Why can't we have college classes? I need a fan in my cell, please. The social worker is silent. Then she shakes her head. I have no idea what's in that box.
Anne Bracken, what do you think you accomplished?
Well, it was a journey for me. It was a real growth experience for me to go and to learn about the actual people that are incarcerated. And I feel like working in 3 prisons, I got a pretty good example of over a 3-year period of what the prison system is about. And the work that I do was as much for me as for the men, but it was, this book is about humanizing the people that are in prison. I hate it when I hear the term ex-felon. It's like you're totally defined by what the crime that you committed. Why should you be an ex anything? Why can't this person be, if you're going to say anything, formerly incarcerated?
Good point. Very good point. Finally, is there any evidence that much was accomplished on the other side of the desk? What did you see to know that some inroads had been made?
Just the things that the men wrote, and the fact that somebody would write to me 3 years later, I was just so surprised. And I told him that. I said, I'm really surprised that you remembered me. And he said, listen, we don't get that many people to come in here. So if somebody comes in and they care, believe me, we remember you. So, I mean, that just about made me cry, really.
Anne Bracken, thank you for your work in the world. Thank you for being an activist poet.
It's been a very special night. So let's close in a very special way with one more poem by Anne Bracken.
And before I read, I just want to express my sincere gratefulness and appreciation to Henry and Grace for working with me this evening and making all of this so seamlessly possible and beautiful. And thank you for everyone who came to the reading. It just really warms my heart to know that you're out there and that this work is meaningful to you as well. And this is the title poem. It's called Hope on Hold. Once you're inside, ignore the wreckage of time, the lined faces of men gray with age, the once cagey 16-year-old, the disorganized shuffle of papers, of rules, of feet, the torpor of boredom thick as dreams of honey on toast. Once you're inside, every smile is suspect, every glance a risk. Even hope tucks into a corner when those doors groan closed. Thank you.